Hello everyone, my name is Mr. Hall and I'm a teacher at the African Center College Preparatory Academy. Today we are going to talk about story elements. Story elements are the different parts of a story. We are also going to read the story Buzzy the Bumblebee and identify the characters, which are the people or animals in a story. We're going to examine the setting, which is where the story takes place, and we're going to look at the plot, which is the beginning, middle, and end of a story by retelling it. Let's go ahead and get started. Buzzy the Bumblebee. One sunny day in a beautiful garden, there sat a bumblebee named Buzzy. His stripes were black and yellow, and his coat was rather fuzzy. Look at Buzzy. Buzzy liked to fly like all bumblebees. He danced with the flowers and swayed with the breeze. He also liked to read and thought himself worldly and wise. So Buzzy was startled when he read, "Bumblebees weren't made to fly." He read it over and over. Bumblebees weren't made to fly, according to studies and research, and it went on to explain why. Their wingspan is wrong. Their bodies are too big. Buzzy was confused. He thought, I'm not a pig. Buzzy couldn't believe what he had read and kept thinking, can these facts be true? I've been flying all this time and I shouldn't have been able to? He tried to make his wings work by pumping with all of his might, but the words he had read were stuck in his head and now something just wasn't right. Buzzy was stranded on top of a flower, longing to fly away. His heart still knew how, but his head had forgotten the way. Buzzy was scared. How will I get down now that I can't fly anymore? I'll have to climb down, he decided, something he had never done before. With book in tow and little heart pounding, Buzzy tentatively took the first step. Then very, very slowly, down the flower he crept. Buzzy's foot started to slip and he felt himself letting go. Oh no! Buzzy just fell off the flower. Thank goodness for a leaf. It helped cushion the blow. Dazed, Buzzy slowly sat up thinking, what should I do now? My home is so far away. I've got to get there somehow. Two dragonflies saw Buzzy walking and they asked, what's wrong with you? Buzzy sadly told them, my flying days are through. They didn't understand his problem because their wings worked just fine. Would you walk with me? Buzzy asked. No, thank you, they declined. Look at them. Feeling very envious and even a little mad, Buzzy had a funny feeling inside. He wanted what they had. Envious means kind of like jealous. To want something that someone else has. Sometimes writers do this really cool thing where they write inside the story what the meaning of a word means. Heavy-hearted, he trudged on, anxious to get home. Buzzy needed his family, so he felt so all alone. Just then, Buzzy saw a stream and cried out in frustration, now that I can't fly anymore, will I ever reach my destination? Every problem has a solution, his mother always said. Buzzy had to find an answer. He'd have to use his head. At that very moment, a flower petal drifted by. It gently floated to the river's edge as Buzzy let out a sigh. Buzzy had an idea. I need something that will float. Looking at the petal in the water, he thought, that could be my boat. He picked up the blue jay's feather and cautiously pushed himself out. When Buzzy realized the petal would work, he gave a joyful shout. As he safely reached the other side, Buzzy was filled with relief. Yeah, he's happy, he's good. That is, until he saw the tall, tall grass and was suddenly overcome with grief. Sadly, he remembered the days when above the grass he would soar. Once again, he thought, what will I do now that I can't fly anymore? Peering through the thick green grass, Buzzy thought, this just isn't fair. About to give up, he heard a voice say, don't stop. You're almost there. He looked up to see where it came from, but his eyes only met the sun. Mustering all the energy he had left, Buzzy began to run. Buzzy burst through the door with a tear in his eye. "Mom and Dad, why didn't you tell me bumblebees weren't made to fly?" "Why, Buzzy," they said, "you certainly can fly. Until now, that is. And do you know why?" "You're doubting yourself. Fear is blocking the way. Listen to your heart, Buzzy, not with what others say. Ignore labels and limits. They seldom do good. They make you think you can't when inside you knew you could." Buzzy thought about what they had said and knew his parents were right. It's belief in ourselves that helps us take flight. Quickly, Buzzy ran out the door and looked up at the sky. Bursting with confidence and desire, Buzzy shouted, "I want to fly!" Buzzy's wings fluttered and his spirit began to soar. Buzzy knew he would be all right. He would fly once more. Buzzy's pretty confident right now. He's pretty excited. And sure enough, Buzzy flew. And do you know why? By believing that he could, Buzzy was able to fly. What a fantastic story. Now, let's work on identifying the story elements in the story. So, let's talk about the characters. Who are the characters in the story? Let's think about that. It may be helpful to go back and look back through the story and retell it. So, I'm going to look back through the story, and I remember that Buzzy was at the top of a fence at the very beginning, and then he started to read this book. And as he read the book said that bumblebees weren't made to fly. And then after he read that book, he was on top of a flower and he got stuck, and then he fell down, and then he had all these other challenges that he faced. Like he saw some dragonflies and he really wanted their wings because he was able to see them fly. He crossed a river, and when he got across the river, there was this tall grass. So he was suddenly overcome with grief and he felt like he couldn't do it. And then after he got across the grass, he was able to make it home, and he asked his parents why he couldn't fly anymore, and they explained it to him, and they gave him some confidence and encouraged him, and then he was able to fly. So I just retold the story. Now let's go back and identify the characters. Who were the characters in the story? If you said Buzzy the bumblebee, you were correct. Maybe you might have also said his parents, Mom and Dad. Let's talk a little bit about the setting. The setting is where the story takes place. And in this story, it seems like the setting was outside in many places, like across the river or at his home near the tree. There were many places, but I would say the setting is definitely outside. So we're going to put a picture of the setting on our chart. Now, let's talk about the plot. Remember, the plot is what happens at the beginning, middle, and end of a story. So let's think. In the beginning, Buzzy had read that book that said bumblebees weren't made to fly. But before that, he was able to fly successfully. So let's put that down as the beginning of the story. Buzzy was able to fly at the beginning, but then he read that book and he wasn't able to fly anymore. Now let's talk about what happened in the middle of the story. In the middle of the story, I can honestly say that Buzzy had so many challenges. There was the tall grass, there was the flower, there was the dragonflies. It was just so much going on. So it was very, very hard for him. He wasn't flying, he was walking. So that's what happened in the middle of the story. Let's put that there. And at the end of the story, Buzzy learned to believe in himself. He was able to reconnect with his parents, and they told him to believe in himself, and he was able to fly. So he got the confidence that he needed to move on. I hope that you took away a lot from the lesson today, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you so much for joining me as we learned about story elements. Have a great week.